Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome back to the live studios here at Wisteria College? No, Cottage. Anyway, some people like to think it's a college now that we're having all these deep readings of philosophy and spiritual science. So it is like a college class. Okay, welcome to everyone out there in cyberspace. And we're going to go right into it because we're a little bit late today because we had late appointments and everything. Okay. Reading from Sri Krishna Leela Stava by Srila Sanatana Goswami, the senior disciple of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself, no less. It's called Srimad-Bhagavatam Mahima Stotra. It's the 412th through the 416th verse of this book, which was Sanatana Goswami's his 108 obeisances to the Vrindavan pastimes of Krishna. And this is the 107th obeisance out of 108. I don't remember which the 108th is. I don't remember what it was. But this is his obeisance to the Srimad-Bhagavatam. Sarva Shastrabdi Piyusha Sarva Vedaika Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnaja Sarva Lokaika Drikprada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavata Prabho Kalidwandodita Aditya Sri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master Srimad Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Sri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya Premavarshakshārayate Sarvadasa Vasevyaya Shri Krishnaya Namostu Me. I bow down to you, who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. That means you shouldn't miss a syllable. Every syllable is flowing down a flood of prema. You shouldn't miss one syllable. You are Sri Krishna himself. Madeka Bando Matsangin Madguru Man Mahadana Man Nistadaga Mad Bhagya Mad Anandana Mostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu, sadhuta dayin adini chotata kara, hanamun jagadachin mam prem narit kantayospura. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, we've just heard Krishna's giving to Brahma the 4 seed verses of the Srimad-Bhagavatam. And now we're moving on. Text 38, chapter 9, canto 2. Shri Shuka Uvacha. Shukadev Goswami said to Maharaj Parikshit, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, after being seen in his transcendental form, instructing Brahmaji, the leader of the living entities, disappeared. That's Krishna. He comes and he goes as he pleases. Purport. In this verse it is clearly mentioned that the Lord is Anajaha, or the Supreme Person, and that he was showing his transcendental form, Atmano Rupam, to Brahmaji, while instructing him in the summarization of Srimad-Bhagavatam in 4 verses. He is Ajana, or the Supreme Person, amongst Jananam, or all persons. All living entities are individual persons, and amongst all such persons, Lord Hari is supreme, as confirmed in the Shruti mantra, Nityo Nityanam Chaitanas Chaitananam. So there is no place for impersonal features in the transcendental world, as there are impersonal features in the material world. Wherever there is Chaitana, or knowledge, the personal feature comes in. In the spiritual world, everything is full of knowledge, and therefore everything there is personal. Nothing is impersonal. The land, the water, the trees, the mountains, the rivers, the men, the animals, the birds, all are of the same quality, namely Chaitana. And therefore everything in the transcendental world is individual and personal. Srimad-Bhagavatam gives us this information as the supreme Vedic literature, and it was personally instructed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead to Brahmaji, so that the leader of the living entities might broadcast the message to all in the universe in order to teach the supreme knowledge of Bhakti Yoga. Brahmaji in his turn taught Narada, his beloved son, the same message of Srimad Bhagavatam, and Narada in his turn taught the same to Vyasadeva, who again taught it to Shukadeva Goswami. Through Shukadeva Goswami's grace, and by the mercy of Maharaj Parikshit, we are all given Srimad Bhagavatam perpetually to learn the science of the absolute personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna. Text 39. On the disappearance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, who is the object of transcendental enjoyment for the senses of devotees, Brahma, with folded hands, began to recreate the universe. Wow. With folded hands, he began to recreate the universe. I mean, when we do something, we all have to use all of our thing. To do any little thing, we have to. But he's, with folded hands, he's creating the universe. Full with living entities as it was previously. Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, is the object for fulfilling the senses of all living entities. Illusioned by the glaring reflection of the external energy, the living entities worship the senses instead of engaging them properly in fulfilling the desires of the Supreme. In the Hari Bhakti Sudodaya, there's the following verse: Akshno palam twad vishadarsanam hi tanok palam twad vishagatra sangaha jiva palam twad vishakirtanam hi sudurlabha bhagavata hi loke. O devotee of the Lord, the purpose of the visual sense is fulfilled simply by seeing you. And to touch your body is the fulfillment of bodily touch. The tongue is meant for glorifying your qualities, because in this world, a pure devotee of the Lord is very difficult to find. Originally, the senses of a living entity were awarded for this purpose, namely, to engage them in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, or that of his devotees. But the conditioned souls, illusioned by the material energy, became captivated by sense enjoyment. Therefore, the whole process of God consciousness is meant to rectify the conditional activities of the senses and to re-engage them in the direct service of the Lord. Lord Brahma thus engaged his senses in the service of the Lord by recreating the conditioned living entities to act in the recreated universe. This material universe is thus created and annihilated by the will of the Lord. It is created to give the conditioned souls a chance to act, to return home, back to Godhead. And servants like Brahmaji, Naradaji, Vyasaji, and their company become busy with the same purpose of the Lord, to reclaim the conditioned souls from the field of sense gratification and return them to the normal stage of engaging the senses in the service of the Lord. But the impersonalists, instead of doing so, that is, converting the actions of the senses, try to make the conditioned souls senseless, and the Lord also senseless. That is improper treatment for the conditioned souls. The diseased condition of the senses may be treated by curing the defect, not by uprooting the senses altogether. When there is some disease in the eyes may be cured to see properly. Plucking out the eyes is no treatment. Similarly, the whole material disease is based on the process of sense gratification, and liberation from the diseased condition is re-engagement of the senses to see the beauty of the Lord, hear his glories, and act on his account. Thus Brahmaji created the universal activities again. Text 40. Thus, once upon a time, the forefather of living entities and the father of religiousness, Lord Brahma, situated himself in acts of regulative principles, desiring self-interest for the welfare of all living entities. Purport. One cannot be situated in an exalted position without having undertaken a regulative life of rules and regulations. An unrestricted life of sense gratification is animal life. And Lord Brahma, in order to teach all concerned within the jurisdiction of his generations, taught the same principles of sense control for executing higher duties. He desired the welfare of all as servants of God. And anyone desiring the welfare of the members of his family and generations must conduct a moral, religious life. The highest life of moral principles is to become a devotee of the Lord, because a pure devotee of the Lord has all the good qualities of the Lord. On the other hand, one who is not a devotee of the Lord, however qualified he may be in the mundane sense of the term, cannot be qualified with any good quality worthy of the name. The pure devotees of the Lord, like Brahma and persons in the chain of disciplic succession, do not do anything to instruct their subordinates without acting accordingly themselves. Text 41. Narada, the most dear of the inheritor sons of Brahma, always ready to serve his father, strictly follows the instructions of his father by his mannerly behavior, meekness, and sense control. Text 42. Narada very much pleased his father and desired to know all about the energies of Vishnu, the master of all energies, for Narada was the greatest of all sages and the greatest of all devotees, O king. Purport. Lord Brahma, being the creator of all living beings in the universe, is originally the father of several well-known sons, like Daksha, the Chatusanas, and Narada. In 3 departments of human knowledge, disseminated by the Vedas, namely fruitive work, Karmakanda, transcendental knowledge, Jnana-kanda, and devotional service, Upasana-kanda, Devarshi Narada inherited from his father, Brahma, devotional service, whereas Daksha inherited from his father fruitive work, and Sanaka, Sanatana, and so on, inherited from their father information about Jnana-kanda, or transcendental knowledge. But out of them all, Narada is described here as the most beloved son of Brahma, because of good behavior, obedience, meekness, and readiness to render service under the Father. And Narada is famous as the greatest of all sages, because of his being the greatest of all devotees. Narada is the spiritual master of many famous devotees of the Lord. He is the spiritual master of Prahlad, Dhruva, and Vyasa, down to the forest animal hunter, Kirata. His only business is to turn everyone to the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Therefore, all these features of Narada make him the dearmost son of his father. And all this is due to Narada's being a first-class devotee of the Lord. The devotees are always anxious to know more and more about the Supreme Lord, the master of all energies. And he confirms in the Bhagavad Gita, Machchita, Madgata Prana, Bodhayantak Parasparam, Katayantas Jamam Nityam, Tushanticha Ramanticha. The thoughts of my pure devotees dwell in me. Their lives are fully devoted to my service, and they derive great satisfaction and bliss from always enlightening one another and conversing about me. The Supreme Lord is unlimited, and his energies are also unlimited. No one can know them completely. Brahmaji, being the greatest living entity within this universe and being directly instructed by the Lord, must know more than anyone else within this universe, although such knowledge may not be complete. Thus it is the duty of everyone to ask about the unlimited Lord from the spiritual master in the disciplic succession of Brahma, which descends from Narada to Vyasa, and from Vyasa to Shukadev, and so on. Text 43. The great sage Narada also inquired in detail from his father Brahma, the great-grandfather of all the universe, after seeing him well satisfied. Purport. The process of understanding spiritual or transcendental knowledge from the realized person is not exactly like asking an ordinary question from the schoolmaster. The schoolmasters in the modern days are paid agents for giving some information. But the spiritual master is not a paid agent. Nor can he impart instruction without being authorized. In the Bhagavad Gita 4.34, the process of understanding transcendental knowledge is directed as follows. Tadvidi panipatina pariprashnena sevaya upadikshantite jnanam jnaninas tatvadarshinaha. Arjuna was advised to receive transcendental knowledge from the realized person by surrender, questions, and service. Receiving transcendental knowledge is not like exchanging dollars. Such knowledge has to be received by service to the spiritual master. As Brahmaji receives the knowledge directly from the Lord by satisfying him fully, similarly, one has to receive the transcendental knowledge from the spiritual master by satisfying him. The spiritual master's satisfaction is the means of assimilating transcendental knowledge. One cannot understand transcendental knowledge simply by becoming a grammarian. The Vedas declare, Yasya Devi Para Bhaktir yata tevitata garo tasyaite katita yarta prakashante mahatmanaha. Only unto one who has unflinching devotion to the Lord and to the spiritual master does transcendental knowledge become automatically revealed. Now I have an anecdotal story about this. In the early days in Indian ISKCON history, Guru Kripa, my godbrother, was one of the first sannyasis, early sannyasis, not first, but one of the early sannyasis. And he was one of the first to really start to memorize verses and know Shastra really well. And he memorized a lot of the Gita. So he got a little bit of a reputation. So one day he was sitting with Prabhupada. He told this to Vaisheshika Prabhu. Vaisheshika Prabhu told it to me, so it's real close to the source. So Prabhupada asked him, so, Guru Kripa Maharaj, what's the most important verse? And he thought for a second and he said, Harer Nama, Harer Nama, Harer Nama, Eva Kevalam, Kalo Nasteva, Nasteva, Naseva, Bhaktiranyata, Gatiranyata. And Prabhupada said, no. And then he quoted this verse. Yasya Devi Pura Bhaktir Yata Devi Tata Karo Tasya Ita Katitar Yata Prakashante Mahatmana. Only unto one who has unflinching devotion to the Lord and to the spiritual master does transcendental knowledge become automatically revealed. Such a relationship between the disciple and the spiritual master is eternal. One who is now the disciple is the next spiritual master. You're preparing yourself, right? Are you? And one cannot be a bona fide and authorized spiritual master unless one has been strictly obedient to his spiritual master. Brahmaji, as a disciple of the Supreme Lord, received the real knowledge and imparted it to his dear disciple Narada. And similarly, Narada, as spiritual master, handed over this knowledge to Vyasa, and so on. Therefore, the so-called formal spiritual master and disciple are not facsimiles of Brahma and Narada, or Narada and Vyasadeva. The relationship between Brahma and Narada is reality, while the so-called formality is the relation between the cheater and the cheated. It is clearly mentioned herewith that Narada is not only well-behaved, meek, and obedient, but also self-controlled. One who is not self-controlled, specifically in sex life, can become neither a disciple nor a spiritual master. One must have disciplinary training in controlling speaking, anger, the tongue, mind, the belly, and the genitals. One who has controlled the particular senses mentioned above is called a Goswami. Without becoming a Goswami, one can become neither a disciple nor a spiritual master. The so-called spiritual master without sense control is certainly the cheater, and the disciple of such the so-called spiritual master is the cheated. One should not think of Brahmaji as a dead great-grandfather. Prabhupada, he's so classic, huh? So classic, poetic. One should not think of Brahmaji as a dead great-grandfather, as we have experienced on this planet. He is the oldest great-grandfather, and he is still living. And Narada is also living. The age of the inhabitants of the Brahmaloka planet is mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita. The inhabitants of this small planet Earth can hardly calculate even the duration of one day of Brahma. Text 44. Thereupon, the supplementary Vedic literature Srimad-Bhagavatam, which was described by the personality of Godhead and which contains 10 characteristics, was told with satisfaction by the father Brahma to his son Narada. Purport. Although the Srimad-Bhagavatam was spoken in 4 verses, it has 10 characteristics, which will be explained in the next chapter. In the 4 verses, it is first said that the Lord existed before the creation, and thus the beginning of the Srimad-Bhagavatam includes the Vedanta aphorism, Janmad Yasya Yataha. Janmad Yasya Yataha is the beginning, yet the 4 verses in which it is said that the Lord is the root of everything that be, beginning from the creation up to the supreme abode of the Lord, naturally explain the 10 characteristics. One should not misunderstand by wrong interpretations that the Lord spoke only 4 verses, and that therefore all the rest of the 17,996 verses are all useless. The 10 characteristics, as will be explained in the next chapter, require so many verses just to explain them properly. Brahmaji had also advised Narada previously that he should expand the idea he had heard from Brahmaji. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu instructed this to Srila Rupa Goswami in a nutshell, but the disciple Rupa Goswami expanded this very elaborately, and the same subject was further expanded by Jiva Goswami, and even further by Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. We are just trying to follow in the footsteps of all these authorities. So Srimad Bhagavatam is not like ordinary fiction or mundane literature. It is unlimited in strength, and however one may expand it according to one's own ability. Bhagavatam still cannot be finished by such expansion. Srimad Bhagavatam, being the sound representation of the Lord, is simultaneously explained in 4 verses and in 4 billion verses, all the same, inasmuch as the Lord is smaller than the atom and bigger than the unlimited sky. Such is the potency of Srimad Bhagavatam. Text 45. In succession, O King, the great sage Narada instructed Srimad Bhagavatam under the unlimitedly powerful Vyasadeva, who meditated in devotional service upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Absolute Truth, on the bank of the river Saraswati. Purport. In the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 5th chapter, verse 13, Narada instructed the great sage Vyasadeva as follows: Ato Mahabhagavan Amogadrik Shuchi Shabak Satyarato Dridavrataha Udu Kramasya Kilabanda Muktaye Samadhinam Nus Maratad Vicheshtitam. O greatly fortunate, pious philosopher, your name and fame are universal, and you are fixed in the absolute truth, with spotless character and infallible vision. I ask you to meditate upon the activities of the personality of Godhead, whose activities are unparalleled. So in the disciplic succession of the Brahma Sampradaya, the practice of yoga meditation is not neglected. But because the devotees are bhakti yogis, they do not undertake the trouble to meditate upon the impersonal Brahman, as indicated here. They meditate on Brahma Paramam, or the Supreme Brahman. Brahman realization begins from the impersonal effulgence, but by further progress of such meditation, manifestation of the Supreme Soul, Paramatma realization takes place. And progressing further, realization of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is fixed. Sri Narada Muni, as the spiritual master of Vyasadeva, knew very well the position of Vyasadeva, and thus he certified the qualities of Srila Vyasadeva as fixed in the absolute truth with great vow, etc. Narada advised meditation upon the transcendental activities of the Lord. Impersonal Brahman has no such activities, but the personality of Godhead has many activities, and all such activities are transcendental, without any tinge of material quality. If the activities of the Supreme Brahman were material activities, then Narada would not have advised Vyasadeva to meditate upon them. And the Param Brahma is Lord Sri Krishna, as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita. In the 10th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, when Arjuna realized the factual position of Lord Krishna, he addressed Lord Krishna in the following words: Param Brahma Param Dhamma Pavitram Paramam Bhavan Purusham Shastvatam Divyam Adideva Majam Vibhum Ahus Tvam Rishiyak Sarve Devarshir Naradastata Asito Devalo Vyasa Swayam Chaiva Brivishime. Arjuna summarized the purpose of the Bhagavad Gita by his realization of Lord Sri Krishna, and thus said, "My dear personality of Godhead, you are the Supreme Absolute Truth, the original person in the eternal form of bliss and knowledge." And this is confirmed by Narada, Asita, Devala, and Vyasadeva. And above all, you yourself have also personally confirmed it. When Vyasadeva fixed his mind in meditation, he did it in Bhakti Yoga, trance, and actually saw the Supreme Person with Maya, the illusory energy, in contraposition. As we have discussed before, the Lord's Maya, or illusion, is also a representation, because Maya has no existence without the Lord. Darkness is not independent of light. Without light, no one can experience the contraposition of darkness. However, this Maya, or illusion, cannot overcome the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but stands apart from Him, apashrayam. Therefore, perfection of meditation is realization of the Personality of Godhead, along with His transcendental activities. Meditation on the impersonal Brahman is a troublesome business for the meditator, as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 12.5, Klesho Dikataraste Sham Avyakta Sakta Chetasam. Text 46. O King, your questions as to how the universe became manifested from the gigantic form of the personality of Godhead, as well as other questions, I shall answer in detail by explanation of the 4 verses already mentioned. Purport. As stated in the beginning of the Srimad-Bhagavatam, this great transcendental literature is the ripened fruit of the tree of Vedic knowledge. And therefore all questions that can be humanly possible regarding the universal affairs, beginning from its creation, are all answered in the Srimad-Bhagavatam. I think that's why Prabhupada said, if you learn this book, it's as good as having 12 PhDs or 100 PhDs. I'll read that again, it's so nice. As stated in the beginning of Srimad-Bhagavatam, this great transcendental literature is the ripened fruit of the tree of Vedic knowledge, and therefore all questions that can be humanly possible regarding the universal affairs, beginning from its creation, are all answered in the Srimad-Bhagavatam. The answers depend only on the qualification of the person who explains them. The 10 divisions of Srimad-Bhagavatam, as explained by the great speaker, Srila Shukadeva Goswami, are the limitations, are the limitation of all questions, and intelligent persons will derive all intellectual benefits by them, from them by proper utilization. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the second canto, 9th chapter of Srimad-Bhagavatam, entitled Answers by Citing the Lord's Version. It took a long time to get to that 9th chapter. It's only 46 verses. That's amazing because, Bhagavad Gita, 43 verses, 42 verses, 3rd and 4th chapters, 34 verses, the 9th chapter. It's about the same in length, but boy, what it packs into that 46 verses is amazing. Okay. Now we move on to the 10th and the last chapter of the second canto. We're about ready to go into the third canto. Bhagavatam is the answer to all questions. Okay, text 1. Sri Shukadeva Goswami said, in the Srimad-Bhagavatam there are 10 divisions of statements regarding the following: the creation of the universe, subcreation, planetary systems, protection by the Lord, the creative impetus, the change of manus, the science of God, returning home back to Godhead, liberation, and the summum bonum. Text 2. To isolate the transcendence of the summum bonum, the symptoms of the rest are described sometimes by Vedic evidence, sometimes by direct explanation, and sometimes by summary explanations given by the great sages. Text 3. The elementary creation of 16 items of matter, namely the 5 elements, fire, water, earth, air, and sky, sound, form, taste, smell, and touch, and the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, skin, and mind, is known as sarga, whereas subsequent resultant interaction of the modes of material nature is called visarga. Purport. In order to explain the 10 divisional symptoms of the Srimad-Bhagavatam, there are 7 continuous verses. The first of these, under reference, pertains to the 16 elementary manifestations of earth, water, etc., with material ego composed of material intelligence and mind. The subsequent creation is a result of the reactions of the above-mentioned 16 energies of the first Purusha, the Mahavishnu incarnations of Govinda, as later explained by Brahma in his treatise, Brahma Samhita, as follows. Yakkaranar nabajale bhajatis vayoga nidram ananta jagadanda saromakupaha adhara shaktim avalambya param swamurtim govindam adipurusham tamaham bhajami. The first Purusha incarnation of Govinda, Lord Krishna, known as the Mahavishnu, goes into a yoga nidra, mystic sleep, and the innumerable universes are situated in potency in each and every hair hole of his transcendental body. As mentioned in the previous verse, one must refer to the Vedic conclusions, Shrutena, to understand how the creation is made possible from the Supreme Personality of Godhead directly by manifestation of his particular energies. Without such a Vedic reference, the creation appears to be a product of material nature. This conclusion comes from a poor fund of knowledge. From Vedic reference, it is concluded that the origin of all energies, namely internal, external, and marginal, is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And as explained herein before, the illusory conclusion is that the creation is made by the inert material nature. The Vedic conclusion is transcendental light, whereas the non-Vedic conclusion is material darkness. The internal potency of the Supreme Lord is identical with the Supreme Lord, and the external potency is enlivened in contact with the internal potency. The parts and parcels of the internal potency, which react in contact with the external potency, are called the marginal potency, or the living entities. Thus, the original creation is directly from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or Parabrahman, and the secondary creation, as a reactionary result of the original ingredients, is made by Brahma. Thus, the activities of the whole universe are started. Text 4. The right situation for the living entities is to obey the laws of the Lord and thus be in perfect peace of mind under the protection of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Manus and their laws are meant to give right direction in life. The impetus for activity is the desire for fruitive work. Purport. This material world is created, maintained for some time, and again annihilated by the will of the Lord. The ingredients for creation and the subordinate creator, Brahma, are first created by Lord Vishnu in his first and second incarnations. The first Purusha incarnation is the Mahavishnu, and the second Purusha incarnation is the Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, from whom Brahma is created. The third Purusha avatar is Chirodakashayi Vishnu, who lives as a supersoul of everything in the universe and maintains the creation generated by Brahma. Shiva is one of the many sons of Brahma, and he annihilates the creation. Therefore, the original creator of the universe is Vishnu, and he is also the maintainer of the created beings by his causeless mercy. As such, it is the duty of all conditioned souls to acknowledge the victory of the Lord and thus become pure devotees and live peacefully in this world, where miseries and dangers are always in existence. The conditioned souls who take this material creation as the place for satisfaction of the senses and are thus illusioned by the external energy of Vishnu remain again to be subjected to the laws of material nature, creation, and destruction. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that beginning from the topmost planet of this universe down to the lowest planet, Pataloka, all are destructible, and the conditioned souls may travel in space either by good or bad work, or by modern spacecraft, but they are sure to die everywhere. Although the duration of life in different planets is different. The only means to attain eternal life is to go back home, back to Godhead, where there is no more rebirth, as in the material planets. The conditioned souls, being unaware of this very simple fact, because of forgetting their relationship with the Lord of Vaikuntha, try to plan out a permanent life in this material world. Being illusioned by the external energy, they thus become engaged in various types of economic and religious development, forgetting that they are meant for going back home, back to Godhead. This forgetfulness is so strong due to the influence of Maya that the conditioned souls do not at all want to go back to Godhead. By sense enjoyment, they become victims of birth and death repeatedly, and thus spoil their human lives, which are chances for going back to Vishnu. The directive scriptures made by the Manus in different ages and millenniums are called Saddharma, good guidance for the human beings, who should take advantage of all the revealed scriptures for their own interest, to make life's successful termination. The creation is not false, but it is a temporary manifestation just to give a chance for the conditioned souls to go back to Godhead. The desire to go back to Godhead and functions performed in that direction form the right path of work. When such a regulative path is accepted, the Lord gives all protection to His devotees by His causeless mercy, while the non-devotees risk their own activities to bind themselves in a chain of fruitive reactions. The word saddharma is significant in this connection. Saddharma, or duty performed for going back to Godhead by becoming His unalloyed devotee, is the only pious activity. Other activities may appear to be pious, but actually they are not. It is for this reason only that the Lord advises in the Bhagavad Gita that one give up all so-called religious activities and completely engage in the devotional service of the Lord to become free from all anxieties due to the dangerous life of material existence. To work situated in Saddharma is the right direction of life. One's aim of life should be to go back home, back to Godhead, and not be subjected to repeated births and deaths in the material world by getting good or bad bodies for temporary existence. Herein lies the intelligence of human life, and one should desire to perform the activities of life in that way. Text 5. The science of God describes, well, thank you very much. Thank you. You're so attentive to detail. Thank you. Hare Krishna. The science of God describes the incarnations of the personality of Godhead and His different activities together with the activities of His great devotees. Purport. During the course of the existence of the cosmic manifestation, the chronology of history is created, recording the activities of the living entities. People in general have a tendency to learn the history and narrations of different men and times, but due to a lack of knowledge in the science of Godhead, they are not apt to study the history of the incarnations of the personality of Godhead. It should always be remembered that the material creation is created for the salvation of the conditioned souls. The merciful Lord, out of His causeless mercy, descends to various planets in the material world and acts for the salvation of the conditioned souls. That makes the history and narrations worth reading. Srimad-Bhagavatam offers such transcendental topics of the Lord in relationship with great devotees. Therefore, the topics of the devotees and the Lord are to be given respectful oral reception. Text 6. The merging of the living entity, along with his conditional living tendency, with the mystic lying down of the Mahavishnu, is called the winding up of the cosmic manifestation. Liberation is the permanent situation of the form of the living entity after it gives up the changeable, gross, and subtle material bodies. Purport. As we have discussed several times, there are two types of living entities. Most of them are ever liberated, or nitya-muktas, while some of them are ever conditioned. The ever conditioned souls are apt to develop a mentality of lording it over the material nature, and therefore the material cosmic creation is manifested to give the ever conditioned souls two kinds of facilities. One facility is that the conditioned soul can act according to his tendency to lording it over the cosmic manifestation, and the other facility gives the conditioned soul a chance to come back to Godhead. So after the winding up of the cosmic manifestation, most of the conditioned souls merge into the existence of the Mahavishnu, personality of Godhead, lying in his mystic slumber to be created again in the next creation. But some of the conditioned souls who follow the transcendental sound in the form of Vedic literatures are thus able to go back to Godhead, attain their original spiritual bodies after quitting the conditional, gross, and subtle material bodies. The material conditioned bodies develop out of the living entity's forgetfulness of their relationship with Godhead. And during the course of the cosmic manifestation, the conditioned souls are given a chance to revive their original status of life with the help of the revealed scriptures, so mercifully compiled by the Lord in his different incarnations. Reading or hearing such transcendental literatures helps one become liberated even in the conditioned state of material existence. Hear ye, hear ye, hear ye all. The Srimad-Bhagavatam. I'll read that again. How much more clear does that have to be made? Reading or hearing such transcendental literatures helps one become liberated even in the conditional state of material existence. All the Vedic literatures aim at devotional service to the personality of Godhead, and as soon as one is fixed upon this point, he at once becomes liberated from conditional life. The material, gross, and subtle forms are simply due to the conditioned soul's ignorance. And as soon as he is fixed in the devotional service of the Lord, he becomes eligible to be freed from the conditioned state. This devotional service is transcendental attraction for the Supreme on account of his being the source of all pleasing humors. Can you hear that? Did you hear that? Did you hear that? Did you? Did you hear it? Did you? Gotta read that again. Oh, man. This devotional service is transcendental attraction for the Supreme on account of his being the source of all pleasing humors. Got to keep your sense of humor. If you keep hearing about Krishna, you keep your sense of humor. Everyone is after some pleasure or humor for enjoyment, but does not know the supreme source of all attraction. Raso vai sa rasam jivayam labvananti bhavati. Labvanandi bhavati. The Vedic hymns inform everyone about the supreme source of all pleasure. The unlimited fountainhead of all pleasure is the personality of Godhead. And one who is fortunate enough to get this information through transcendental literatures like Srimad-Bhagavatam becomes permanently liberated to occupy his proper place in the kingdom of God. We're going to stop here. Hare Krishna. Now that we've all acquired our sense of humor, humors. see what's happening? It's building. And it keeps building. This is only the second canto, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and it keeps building and building until finally 10th canto and Krishna appears in all his childhood pastimes, all his other pastimes. So hearing the Bhagavatam up till the 10th canto is just purifying, training, preparing. And sometimes you get a glimpse, there'll be something of Krishna's pastimes. We heard something in the first canto, heard something in the second canto, third canto, maybe. Anyway, we'll see if I can't remember offhand. Yes. Reflections and Bhakti-Math, Bill Roberts is going to start it off. Have at.
So Narada is the son of Brahma.
Yes.
Does Narada have a mom?
No.
A mother?
He's the mind-born son of Brahma. Brahma has 10 mind-born sons.
Mind-born son.
It means born from the subtle body of Brahma.
Why was he the most favorable?
Because he was, before he was eligible to become the representative of Bhakti Yoga. He's the supreme Bhakti Yogi. And the 4 Kumaras, if you remember, are the holders or the teachers of the jnana system, the yoga system. Transcendental knowledge. And the others, the other 7, are fruitive. Use Daksha as an example, but there's others who are mind-born sons of Brahma who execute sacrifices, Vedic sacrifices. The 4 Vedas, the original 4 Vedas, have 3 sections, as we heard: the Karma Kanda, the Jnana Kanda, and the Upasana Kanda. In the Karma Kanda section are the hymns vibrated at Vedic sacrifices to propitiate the demigods and improve our next life. And even in this life we can improve ourselves, but especially to go to the heavenly planets. And 96% of the hymns of the Vedas are Karma Kanda, because it's most common. People want that. Most people want that. Most people are not interested in going back to Godhead. So if sometimes in the beginning of our spiritual lives we struggle a bit, we shouldn't feel discouraged, because it's very rare to come to this platform of actually wanting pure devotional service, to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Is that what it means by not meditating upon the impersonal Brahman?
Yes. The Jnana Karma, the second section, the Jnana Kanda, they're hymns that teach us to discriminate between what is matter and what is spirit, and to understand philosophically the difference between matter and spirit. And that ends in the impersonal Brahman, or liberation. The goal of the Jnana Kanda section is liberation. And generally that liberation means liberation in the Brahma effulgence, Brahman effulgence, Brahma Jyoti, which is the light which is emanating from the body of Krishna. And then the Upasana section is the section of worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and His pure devotees. That's Srimad-Bhagavatam. I was listening to Gopi the other day, Gopi Pranadana, my dear godbrother, who I worked with very closely for 5 years, and when he left it was a tragedy. Anyway, he was talking about the Upanishads and how there's many verses in which it sounds like there's it sounds like they're saying that the Supreme has no qualities. You know, like it says he's invisible. So the impersonalists take that to mean that he has no quality. But actually, you know, it's describing one of his qualities. Because if a person doesn't exist and he's invisible, then that's fine. Doesn't mean no. But if a person exists and has the ability to be invisible, that's a very high quality. You know, in the Lord of the Rings, they had that cloak he could put over his body, and then he'd be invisible. Nobody could see him. He just merges into the. I think I heard that the military is trying to develop that ability to put something over them and, you know, be invisible. One more, just a second. There's somebody on the. Okay, first.
I was just wondering that you mentioned that liberation is the soul.
Can they hear you? Can Shamagori speaking, and she speaks very softly, very gently. You want to?
It's just.
This is good. Finally, we've got a text.
I just would like to understand that liberation means that the soul merges into the Brahmajyoti light, but Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that everybody is individual forever, eternally. So is that ultimately possible to merge into the Brahmajyoti?
It is possible. You know, Krishna can do anything, but he doesn't. You know, it's not that the soul loses its individuality when he goes into the Brahmajyoti. He gets a sense of being, but there's no activity and there's no bliss. There's just a sense of relief from being free from the sufferings of the material nature.
So is that mean that ultimately this is another type of illusion?
It's sense gratification. It's sense gratification because it's for me.
But that means if it's sense gratification, if it's for me, then I'm not merging actually.
No. Yeah. Not merging in the sense of becoming. Prabhupada uses the example when you watch an airplane taking off, and you watch it, it just keeps taking off, takes off, and then at some point disappears. It looks like it's disappearing, but it's not disappearing, it's just out of your sight, out of your vision. It doesn't disappear, but it looks like it disappears.
Okay. So to aspire for that, you aspire for something that...
Ignorance.
Yeah, basically.
It's ignorance.
Doesn't exist.
Yes, it's ignorance. But Sayuja is just one of the 5 types of liberation. And the Vaishnavacharyas, they don't accept Sayuja as being a liberation. So it begins with dasya. Or there's different ways of categorizing liberation. One of them is in 5: Sayuja, Sharsti, Saimipya, Sarupya, and Sharsti. Yeah. Merging, living on the same planet, getting the same opulences, being near the Lord, and becoming the same, a form that's similar to the Lord's. Of course, that's similar to the Lord. Doesn't necessarily mean that the form is exactly looks like Vishnu, but it's of same quality, spiritual form. Spiritual form of the soul is the same quality as the spiritual form of the Lord. And it has the same qualities that the Lord has in a minute degree. Therefore, the soul has perfection in Vaikuntha planets and in especially Goloka Vrindavan. There's no difference between the soul and the body. In the Brahmajyoti, the soul doesn't have a body. It has a body, but it's still in a atomized form. The Jivatma is atomized form of the soul. Still there, the soul is still there, the form is still there. Otherwise we wouldn't see. We wouldn't be able to see and smell and taste and smell. The material elements are, they don't see or taste or feel or smell or, So the elements of the body, they're like that. So unless there was the form of the soul receiving, the experience, we wouldn't be able to see. It's not the brain that sees, it's just some synapses that, but it's transferring all those things eventually through the mind and through the intelligence to the soul. There's a soul that actually literally perceives.
Is it like the operating system?
Yeah. Yeah. You got the hardware, you got the software, and you got the operator. We heard Prabhupada this morning we heard Prabhupada talking a lot about that. How they're so foolish. They think that the body is the driver. They keep working on the body and they forget that the driver's somewhere else. When the driver leaves, that's it.
Yeah.
Body is useless. Now, there's somebody had a question.
Yes. Rani Manjari.
Rati Manjari has a question? I never would have guessed. Go ahead, Rati.
She says, Dear Guru Maharaj, please accept my respectful obeisances. I have a question I'm wondering about since a few days. Which form of the Lord appeared before Lord Brahma? Was it Lord Krishna himself or Lord Vishnu?
Lord Krishna. But it depends. If we remember, there's a description of the Lord. Sometimes it depends on the Brahma. If it's Brahma is a pure devotee of Krishna, then he appears as Krishna. Depends on how he attained the position of Lord Brahma. How, and how he worships. The Lord appears according to the quality or the desire of the soul to see.
Do we have any idea about the Lord Brahma of our particular?
Well, we just heard it. Do you remember?
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember what he looked like? Just before the Chatra Sloki Bhagavatam. Remember? Shall we refresh our memories?
Yes.
Okay, we're on verse 7 of chapter 10. We're going back to 9:30, right around here. the beautiful personality of God had addressed Lord Brahma before that. Mm-hmm. Lord Brahma saw in the Vaikuntha planets the personality of Godhead, who was the Lord of the entire devotee community, the Lord of the goddess of fortune, the Lord of all sacrifices, and the Lord of the universe, and who was served by the foremost servitors like Nanda, Sunanda, and Vaikuntha. Prabhala, his immediate associates. But there are descriptions of Brahma meeting Krishna face to face and seeing Goloka Vrindavan. So how that works, or which one, or this or that, I'm not so sure if we can say clear, just clearly. Because, when Krishna, Brahma sees Krishna in Goloka Vrindavan, in Rajabhumi, then he finds out, when he's about 50 years old, he finds out that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of God, and we know that much. But at that particular beginning of the universe, right here, it describes that he's seeing Vaikuntha, Vishnu and Vaikuntha. The Lord was seated on his throne and was surrounded by different energies. Yes.
That's not bad.
Not bad. But, because Lord Brahma he's actually guna avatar. He's actually incarnation of the mode of passion, or the incarnation that who controls the mode of passion. Therefore he's a jiva. He's not Vishnu Tattva. And Shiva is unique. He's a unique tattva. He's not jiva and he's not Vishnu tattva. He's Shiva tattva. The original form of Shiva is an aspect of Vishnu, Sadashiva. And that Sadashiva emanates from Mahavishnu in his glance and then touches the material energy. And this is how Lord Vishnu can glance and impregnate the material energy without touching it, because it's Shiva who touches it. It's his aspect of Sadashiva who touches Maya, has intercourse actually with Maya, and injects all the souls into the material energy all at once. That's why in India all you see is these Shiva lingas, They're all worship, that's what they worship, basically. Yes.
Nitai Gosai. Practicing that wrong. That's a question. Obeisances, Srila Guru Maharaj, thank you. Would you want to elaborate on the nature of and the ultimate qualification for non-argumentative hearing in the mind and intelligence in the face of non-verifiable informations, and on how this is different from blind faith? Your servant, Dayal Nitai Das.
Very intellectual question.
Yeah.
Repeat the question. Would you want to elaborate on the nature of and the ultimate qualification for non-argumentative hearing in the mind?
The ultimate qualification for non-argumentative hearing
in the mind and intelligence.
In the mind and intelligence.
In the face of non-verifiable information.
In the face of non-verifiable information. No, it's not non-verifiable. You're assuming that it's non-verifiable. It is verifiable. It's not non-verifiable. It is verifiable. It's not verifiable through the gross senses, through the material senses in mind, but it is verifiable by the soul. So that is revealed knowledge. So non-argumentative hearing means when one ceases to challenge the authority. When one is intelligent enough to understand that I am inferior to the spiritual master, that the spiritual master is superior to me. It may not be that you have realized the personality of Godhead or the personality of the spiritual master, but you have to have realized or accepted. So therefore, I think the answer to the question is you have to give up your envy. In the very beginning of the Bhagavatam, it's described, Dharma prochito kaitavo tra paramo nirmatsaranam satam. So the qualities are freedom from envy and honesty. Then you can hear, and then just by the hearing, from that non-argumentative hearing, then you get realization. And sometimes it's forced on the soul. I had this realization momentarily when I got that, heavy fever, and I kept hearing, by practice I just kept hearing, even though I was pretty much out of it, but I kept hearing. And then I don't know if anybody read my offering carefully, but I heard more than I've ever heard before, and that was because there was no resistance whatsoever. It was just I was just hearing the sound. So, yeah, the quality is to become, no longer thinking that anything belongs to you, or that you possess anything. And that can come, in my case it came only momentarily, due to an intense disease that just caused me to give up the resisting, I guess you could say, or something. But that can also, it should also eventually come to the point where it comes from, severe penance in devotion. That's how Brahma, remember what the verse said? Krishna said, that penance that you just performed in bhakti yoga or in devotion is my heart. Therefore you've won my heart. Therefore here I am. So read the question again and see if that answer didn't explain something.
Would you want to elaborate on the nature of and the ultimate qualification for non-argumentative hearing in the mind and intelligence in the face of non-verifiable informations, and on how this is different from blind faith?
I think I answered it. Because blind faith means that you just accept something without understanding it. So that requires that you be honest. If you don't understand something, you have to be honest and say, I don't understand. And then the spiritual master will explain it again. And if you can see the structure of the revealed scriptures, Krishna is answering questions. Arjuna's answering questions. Even after he surrendered and became the disciple, he still asked questions. He still had doubts and he asked questions. And you keep answering, you keep asking the questions. Therefore, in that famous verse where Krishna says, Tadvidi Panipatina, we heard about it during the last few days in the purports. Tadvidi Panipatina, Pariprashnina Seviya, Upatikshantite Jnanam, Jnaninas Tattvadarshinaha. It says that in the purport, Prabhupada says that two things are condemned in the process of spiritual advancement, and one is blind following, and the other is absurd inquiries. In other words, if you ask a stupid question, you get a stupid answer. So you have to ask good questions. And then Prabhupada says in that same purport, you have to get a clear understanding from the spiritual master. And to get the clear understanding, you have to keep asking until you get it. And that's what Arjuna did. He kept asking. At some point, he just said, Param Dhamma, okay. And then Krishna revealed to the universal form to him, and that was it. He was gone, he was no longer challenging, or no longer, doubts. Doubts have to be removed. So when your doubts are removed, then you can see, then you can hear. Then it's revealed to you. And that's Krishna. It's all personal. It's not mechanical. It's not some mechanistic, formulaic, I do this, and this, and then, no, Krishna can reveal it, or he can, withdraw it, or withhold it as much as he wants. It all depends on Krishna. So what's required is full surrender. And that's why Krishna ends up saying the most confidential part of knowledge is sarva dharman parityajya, mamekam sharanam vraja. Sarva dharman, all other dharmas, yoga, speculation, analysis, proper execution of duty, all these things are to be given up, and just, mamekam sharanam vraja, surrender to me alone. And then aham tvam sarvabhaupya, I will protect you, and I will, guide you. Don't fear, don't worry. And I will purify you from whatever reactions come to you from being in this material world. And only Krishna can do that. Because only Krishna is in control of the material energy. Pretty good reason to surrender to Krishna. He's the only one that can.
It's worth a shot.
Worth a shot?
Roddy has another question.
Yes.
She says, I have heard that the Brahma Gayatri has emanated from the sound of Krishna's flute. Is this correct?
Yes. Everything emanates from the sound of Krishna's flute. The sound of Krishna's flute is the Omkara. Actually, it's the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. But the Omkara is contained within the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. So that enters into Brahma's ear and enlightens him. And then the Omkara is the seed, sound. And then all the other sounds come from that sound. And even the universe is created from that sound. The Vedas, the sound of the Vedas is eternal. It sounds like the Bhagavatam is only 4 verses, but it's actually 18,000 verses. So that's the nature of transcendental sound. It's the nature of Krishna's form. It's the nature of Krishna's name. It's the nature of everything about Krishna. He's unlimited. Therefore, inconceivable doesn't mean that you can't conceive anything. It means you can't conceive everything. No one can conceive fully of Krishna, and that's what inconceivable means. It not means that I can't conceive enough to surrender to Him and go to Him and be with Him. That's the meaning of inconceivable. That you can't know everything about Krishna. It's not possible. Even Krishna can't know everything about himself because he's always expanding. Yes, Shamka, sure. Shoot.
Could you speak a bit about developing desire to go back to Godhead?
Could I speak something about developing desire to go back to Godhead? Well, there's two things, two ways. First of all, you have to stay here and suffer until you're so sick of it that you don't want to be here anymore. That's the first thing. And the second thing is when you hear, when you come to the point where you're eligible, then Krishna sends you a spiritual master. You remember those days in London? Remember those days? Remember?
Yes.
Remember? I remember. So, you became eligible. You desired enough. You were suffering enough. Now, from that point, you have to keep surrendering. It's not that the surrender is once. There's a verse. Let me test myself. Durina yavadam karma buddhi yoga dhananjaya buddhau sharanam anvijja kripya pala hetava. Would you like to know what that means?
Yes, please.
I'm not supposed to see. I'm just doing everything with this left arm, and I'm not. That book's heavy. It weighs more than 2 pounds, and I'm not supposed to lift anything more than 2 pounds. And I'm starting to do things I'm not supposed to do. Not very good. Better get it fixed. Now I have to find the verse. Can I? Durina yavadam karma buddhi yoga dhananjaya. Maybe in the 2nd chapter. Anyway, I'll look. This is the quickest way to do it. I should know it. I do know it, but at the moment I can't remember. Okay, Durina yavadam. It's a very interesting verse. I was thinking about it the other day, and the Shyam Kisore just brought it into my attention. Durina yavadam karma. Ooh, it is 2. I had the verse, the chapter right. 249. Are you ready?
Yeah.
249. Durina yavadam karma. I got it right. Lucky me. I get the Cupid doll. Buddhi yogan dhananjaya buddhau shananamanbichcha kripana palahetava. O Dhananjaya, O Shyam Kishore, keep all abominable activities far distant by devotional service. And in that consciousness, surrender unto the Lord. Now analyze that. Would you like to analyze it? Or would you like me to analyze it? Would you like to analyze it? You're intelligent. You study psychology.
So, keep horrible activities.
By devotional service.
By devotional service.
That means you've already surrendered.
Mm.
You can't be doing devotional service unless you're already surrendered.
Mm.
Keep all abominable activities far distant by devotional service. And then what? And in that consciousness, surrender to the Lord. What? You mean that's not all there is to it? No. Hear it again. Durina yavadam karma. Durina means discard at a long distance. Throw it away. Throw it far away. He, certainly, without a doubt, avadam, abominable. Karma, activity. Buddhi yoga, on the strength of Krishna consciousness. You see? That means you're already doing devotional service. You're keeping, Maya, if the abominable activities are no longer there because you're engaging in devotional service. That means you've surrendered to Krishna. And in that consciousness, surrender unto the Lord.
So it's like a...
You keep surrendering. And then, those who want to enjoy the fruits of their work are misers. Mm. Mm. Is it clear or not?
Yes.
So, desire. You ask about desire, how I can increase my desire. So even though you're here and you're doing devotional service, you have to continue to surrender. And then Krishna in your heart, he will inspire you, and your desire, you have to, it's your, that's the point. It's your initiative. It's something that you have to do. No one can surrender for you. You have to do it. Everyone knows what surrender means. But the problem is that in the material world, when we think of the concept of surrender, it means something you do when you lost. You lost the war. You lost the wrestling match. You've lost at love, or whatever it is. You've lost. So therefore, we're thinking, surrender, very bad. I have to wave a white flag and be humiliated. Therefore, we don't want to do it materially, in our material consciousness. So you have to give that up. That hesitation you have to give up. That comes from strong desire to want, and you have to consciously hear. You have to hear more and more consciously. You have to allow Krishna to come in. He's there already, but you have to allow him permission to come in. You have to want him. That's desire. You have to increase that desire. You increase that desire by hearing about him, by becoming convinced of just how intelligent he is, just how capable he is of, protecting you and fulfilling all your desires and giving you transcendental happiness. Bringing you to him. Only he can do that. No one else can do that. So if you keep trying and trying and trying and trying, that means you're not giving. You're trying, but you're trying with your own strength. Your own strength, you can't get it. None of us are strong enough. You have to give yourself. That's what surrender means. You have to give yourself. It's the subject matter of practically every movie and poem and that's ever been written practically. Surrender, love, at the end there's this whole big evil, good versus evil, and what happens at the end? It's love, and it conquers everything. It's like, but it's all just keeping people in this, this illusion that they're going to meet their soulmate someday, or or their soul activity, and in the material world, and that's going to be it, and everything's going to live. We're going to live happily ever after, until we die. Until he dies, or she dies, or it dies, or whatever. Well, thanks for that very nice question, Shyam Kishore. Hare Krishna.
So the desires to improve in our devotional service, that similar to this.
When the kirtan gets ecstatic, don't go somewhere else. When the answers get to the point, don't, right? Don't avoid the obvious. Give up sense gratification. You cannot be happy if you're looking for sense gratification. It's not possible. So therefore, why be a glutton for punishment?
Why be what?
Glutton for punishment.
Glutton.
Glutton. When somebody eat gluttonous. Glutton. It's a French-based word, glutton, isn't it? What's gluten? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you can't stop eating. Glutton. Give me some more punishment. No, I don't. No, stop it. Stop. No. Let go. We're holding on and we're saying, let go. Okay, that's it for tonight. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai, Samaveta Bhaktivinoda ki jai. Go Premanandi! Hari Hari Bo. Thank you.